Delighted to be talking with someone who was kind enough to engage with me in print for the blog, but someone who's also agreed to be in an active video space with me with a fireplace and everything, which is wonderful. Yeah.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, absolutely, my pleasure. I'll say your name for the
Mhm.
official record of the episode. Jane Alvey Harris, thank you for jumping in and talking with me for a few minutes about authoring and publishing and all the things.
Yeah, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to mention a couple of titles that you've either authored or co-authored, the Riven series being one of those, which I think is what I was first introduced to, that you worked on. Death Lessons, Vampire Love, lots and lots of titles with very, very catchy names and all the fireplace vibes. Definitely.
Yes. Um, yes, I have participated. I was invited to participate in several horror anthologies. I'd
Hmm.
never sought to write horror before my first invitation, but I guess since Riven and the My Myth trilogy does have some horror elements, that they thought they could ask me, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I've written five short horror stories that are in different anthologies by different publishers and groups. And I've really, really enjoyed participating in that.
Yeah, yeah. It's a unique genre and people just love to be scared in safe ways, it seems like. So
Yeah.
it's a go-to. So curious about what initially connected you to the world of authoring. At what point did you say, this is the thing that I'm going to do?
Okay. So that happened in 2012. And I
Mhm.
know it was in June of 2012. I was invited to attend the Newbery Award Gala
Mm.
in California. And it was the first time. I'd always loved reading. I always had a story in my head, and authors were my celebrities. You know, that's where I went. That I wasn't TV wasn't a problem for me. My parents always took away books, and often my sisters and I would compete, to get the book and hide it and keep it so we could finish it first. But I was volunteering in several libraries when I first moved to Texas. And I volunteered at the libraries where my children were attending school, three different
Mhm.
schools. And the librarian asked if I would wanted to go to the Newbery Award Gala. And I said, yes, I do.
Mhm.
And going there and being just really welcomed by so many people that I never imagine would ever, not just that I would meet them, but they would be so kind and so inviting and so personable. And speaking with them, I just, you hear it all the time in the publishing industry. Someone says, I have a story for you, or I want to write a book. I've got a book in me. And that I had always felt that, although I'd never taken any steps to do anything about it. Usually when I have ambition, my motto would be just lie down. Just take
Mhm.
a nap until that ambition passes. And when I was lying down, I would just daydream more about the stories in my head. So back then in 2012, when I got home from that trip, I bought my first ever MacBook and started writing. And it just poured out of me, not just writing, but I was sketching the characters that were in my head. And I'd been kind of, for my own self, well, as an assignment from my therapist who had told me to write down the scenes in my head, but I didn't know they were a story.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the being at the gala and at the ALA conference that year, I got home and I just started, and I've been going strong ever since.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
And you've written in the world of sort of young adult. I say young adult, but also people who appreciate young adult or young adults at heart, or however you want to go after that. So I'm curious about from those initial steps, what you've learned in that process of writing for that audience.
Well, that audience is deep and wide, as
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
you mentioned, very crossover. I had always loved reading young adult and middle grade, truly, but more than anything else, I like almost every genre
Hmm.
that's written well. And that's all I'll say about that. But because really well written books for teens, they often pack a punch that you just, it either takes longer to get or you never get from books that are written for adults. And I think because they, lots of times there are messages that, or
Hmm. Hmm.
themes, or things that I think um, that are included in those books, because it's such a time of transition and coming of age, that there's so many realizations for everyone, whether you're approaching young adulthood and puberty, or whether you have your adolescence when you're in your late 30s, early 40s,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is kind of what I feel I did. There are relatable issues and characters and concepts that for everyone, not just young adults. So I've learned really and truly that I am a young adult at heart. I do definitely feel like that is my maturity level, and it's a great one. And
Hmm.
I have tried several times to grow up, but basically authenticity when I'm writing is what I strive for. And I know everybody in every genre probably would say they strive for that. But teens are discerning readers. And
Absolutely.
yeah, they know, and they don't have patience for things that just don't vibe with them. So they like raw, they like real. And I'm not, of course, can't speak for all teens, but when I write for readers who read like I do, and I like visual imagery. I like, real plot points and character
Hmm.
driven books. So that's what I would say. I don't know how different it is writing for adults. I have never written a book for adults. I have co-authored for middle grade books, and done several YA, and well, I guess the horror anthologies were for adults, but I just was writing short stories, and I think that most, aside from the main character being not 17 years old, 13 to 17, they are very readable or accessible to young adults. So um yeah, I think that that's what I've learned.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I just keep trying to deliver the kinds of books that I would love to read.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and speaking of the kind of books that you would love to read, that takes me to the question of, why fantasy? Why particularly sort of dark fantasy, which then dovetails so nicely with horror as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So when I was first writing Riven and Secret Keeper, and I'm still writing Primed, which I swear is almost done. It's 88,000 words, and it is so close to being finished, and then the trilogy will be finished. But when I was first writing it, and I was a little bit embarrassed that it had fairies and elves in it. I like
Mm-hmm.
when people would ask me what my books were about, I didn't want to tell them that it had fairies and elves in it, because I thought that they would not, like, that was too juvenile for
Right,
them.
right.
But I'll just say my maiden name Alvey means elf warrior, and that I love that so much. And
That's
it had
cool.
to be part, yeah, it had to be part of my books, because I am a person who, like I said, has always had a story inside me and a huge imagination. And I lived in my imagination, probably always have, as much as in the real world. And I would argue that sometimes the fantasy world is a lot more fun than the
Mhm,
real
mhm,
world.
mhm,
But also, I really believe that when you bring in elements of fantasy, it helped me at least to process parts of reality that were too difficult to process in their not their true form, because I don't think fantasy takes away from anything being true. But it just helped me to access them and think about really difficult traumatic events from my own life
mhm,
in a different way. It gave me some distance, if you would. I was able to take basic concepts and events and manipulate them in a landscape that I had created where there were infinite possibilities, and I could write myself as the hero of my own story.
mhm.
Also, though, what I found out with Secret Keeper is that writing yourself, or and I'm not always suggesting that you should do self-insert characters, but my story, the My Myth trilogy, is definitely inspired by things that I have lived through. That I was able to, yeah, and I'm not even sure what I was saying. Um, but I was able to take them and rearrange them and just really have control over where they went. And it
Mhm,
helped me to
mhm.
process. And then, of course, not everything that happens in your books have happened in real life, but you embellish them. And I think fantasy for me is just a fun way to embellish. And um, to me, the world is magic. And so when I include magic in my books, it seems very natural to me. I mean, when my printer works, it seems like magic. I don't know
For sure.
how, it doesn't always work, so it must be magic. And it's not a far leap for me to take from ordinary to magical.
Yeah, yeah. But it's a pretty magical thing to have the written word to process events, to process life, and to sort of think things through as well. That's its own kind of magic.
Absolutely. And one thing that, like, active daydreaming is very much a part of my writing process. And I mentioned I do sketches and, concept art as well. But it's really fun. I also, after having written my books, I dress up as my characters and go out in the
Mhm.
woods and play just by myself. It's just fun to be able to recreate that world that was in my head, and then to be able to walk around and play in it. So
Yeah,
I'm having a lot of fun.
that is awesome. That is awesome. You are also sharing opportunities with other people to be published. And so as we kind of lean toward talking about the next creative steps and creative visions ahead, I'm curious to hear about that as well as any other writing projects that are currently circling your mind.
Thank you. Well, as I mentioned, Primed, the third book in the My Myth trilogy, that picks up right where Secret Keeper left off, is my next big project that will be done really soon. Um, and in addition to that, I am co-authoring a middle grade. The manuscript is finished. It's going through the final edits now. A middle grade book that is also based on myth and legend. It's called Sword of the Golden City.
Awesome, awesome.
It's been a fun project. The man who had written the screenplay for this book approached me and wanted to turn it into a novel. So I've been working on that. It's been a collaboration of love, and I've learned so much. It's set in Prague, and I've learned so much about the history of that area and all the legends and myths that are featured in the book. It's going to be really fun. In addition to that, I last year started a boutique publishing company. It's called Many Realms Media. And I love working I mentioned that my maturity level is that of a young adult. I love working with young adults, with anybody really, to help them find and develop their creative voice. But so it started out working with a young adult. She was 12 years old when her first book, which was a collection of short stories, was published. And the next book we published was by another amazing creative young adult who is from London, lives in London. And hers was a full-on fantasy adventure, 70,000 words, and just has been received really well. Both of them have been received really well. We have contracts with 6 other young adults in the next who will be published in the next year or so. And what I do is I coach authors. We meet together and we talk about their concepts. We look at what they've written. It's not just editing and revision. Because some people don't even have an idea when they start. They just know they love to write, and they just know they love to read, and they have, they want to do it. So a lot of it is coaxing the ideas out of them. A big part of it is helping them. Not everybody's comfortable with accessing their imagination or living in it the way I live in mine, but helping them do that to really get in touch with their creative side, and then working on a story, fleshing things out, developing character and plot, and then taking them through the publishing process as they get to help with cover design, with the book, Victoria McKay and the Kingdom of Creatures, that came out this past June. It's filled with black and white illustrations of the creatures that are from the kingdom that the author, originally sketched. Her name's Marina Erin Richardson. And then, we gave it to our illustrator. And by the way, I work with my 3 talented adult children. And so that's really fun. And it's just beyond an incredible experience to do that. So I am above my ears in manuscripts. And then again, we also have plenty of adult authors. We had a book come out yesterday called Lori's Lies and Family Ties. That is a nonfiction book from the perspective of Lori Vallow-Daybell's brother and uncle. So it's been a really fascinating adventure to be on, and I feel like my writing skills have grown exponentially just working. I'm so inspired by these kids, adults, just the ideas that they have, the way they see the world and interact with it, and what they bring to the table. I feel like they are, it's a posse of they're going to be the galactic supreme rulers or leaders, because it's amazing what they can do. So many creative projects.
Great.
That are coming up. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Any particular web spaces, places where people can connect with the publishing side of what you do, as well as the publishing others, I should say, as well as your work?
Yeah. So our website, manyrealmsmedia.com, has, we have a section for upcoming authors and authors who've been published. My books are on there too, not the horror anthology, although now that I think of it, I am planning to recollect all of those and put them in an anthology just of them. And it's all about mothers who are terrified of their children. So I didn't plan that. It just worked out that way. So that will be fun. But yes, we're going to re-release Riven and Secret Keeper when Primed comes out as kind of like an anniversary edition, since it's been so long. Riven came out in 2016. So yeah, that is the space. I do have my own Jane Alvey Harris .com website, but we're in the process of moving that all over to many realms, and we're on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all the places that readers like
Nice.
to hang out. So yeah, and we love engaging with readers, as well as aspiring authors, because that's what we are committed to, delivering quality books that are transportive and engaging for our readers.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jane. Did we miss anything that you want to make sure to share
I
before we
don't think
close?
so. I mean, I might think of something much
If you
later
do,
in
let
my
me know.
diffident way. Yeah. But thank you so much. Yeah, I think I covered a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. We try to do a broad range, and so listeners out there can check out the links that you mentioned either on the video in pop-ups that will come up, pop-up boxes around here somewhere, as well as in the podcast description. So thanks again.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you.